This is the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast, and on part 2 of our Rookies episode with the 21 Mike team real estate agents Chris Buck and Ryan Hemeyer, we discuss house flipping, how to increase the value of a home before selling, DIY methods for doing so with sweat equity, the next destination neighborhoods in Cleveland, and more. We also revisit grannyized houses and a couple topics we've touched on previously in other podcasts. Stay tuned. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Hi, this is Mike Ferrante with Century 21 Homestar and the 21 Mike team. And let's be honest, sometimes selling a house can be a real hassle. If you're in the Heights area, you have to worry about those pesky point of sale violations. You have to do other preparations to get your house ready for showings. And what about staging? That's why we work with Reilly Painting and Contracting to help sellers get top dollar for their house. So give us a call at 216-373-7727 or email info@21mike.com. The 21 Mike team, your one-stop shop for buying and selling.
So Mike, sweat equity, grannyized. So you were saying sweat equity.
Yeah, we had a podcast where we talked a lot about grannyized properties. These are properties that maybe grandma and grandpa owned, didn't do cosmetic updates, but kept the house well maintained. I love those types of properties because cosmetic updates are easy, fast, and it's a great way to have some instant equity in a property. And I know some of the buyers that we work with aren't all investors. There's some owner occupants too. So it's nice for an owner occupant to get in there, maybe do some painting themselves, and bam, they've got some equity in a property that they just bought. So I think that's just one example of how you can get some sweat equity. I mean, certainly you could buy something and hire contractors to do work, but I think the idea of sweat equity comes from the buyer doing some of the work themselves.
Right. And that's where, and you're asking questions that are pointed, that are trying to elicit how well can these people swim? You going to put them in the deep end, or are you going to keep the water wings on? Go ahead, Chris, jump in here. Speaking of water.
I think Mike's comment just made me think of how to do it. I mean, it's the corporate world and the beverage industry that I came from. You start at the ground floor and you work your way up. So if you want to buy property and owner occupy and work on it and build some equity in it for yourself, and then reach out and find a new property and rent out the space that you had in there before. I mean, then you have 2 properties, and next thing you know,
or better yet, I was talking to my son, my youngest son, who's renting in Cleveland Heights, and he's got an out-of-state landlord. And I said, maybe we should make an offer to buy this duplex that you're renting and then convert the other unit into an Airbnb. And all of a sudden you're net plus in terms of that. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, so that's kind of how I started. And I know you own a bunch of rentals, Mike. My first couple of purchases were singles that were strictly rentals. And then my third purchase was a duplex, and I lived in half and rented the other half out. And it was an awesome way for me to save money, gain equity, and plan my next investment. So, we talk a lot about out-of-state investors, but certainly local investors have that as an option where they can do that, buy something with multiple units, especially starting out. When you live in a single, there's no income from it. So buying a multifamily is certainly an interesting option, and you get to live there and work on it at your own pace. Another example of sweat equity.
Yeah, well, I'm already hearing Aussie Matt pump his fist because he's one of our listeners who's coming back to Cleveland, and that's the deal he did in Shaker Square. He said, I just made a killing. I got, a duplex. I lived on one side. I fixed it up, rented it out. I didn't have any rent mortgage payments to make because the other side was paying the rent, and then sold it for a profit. Bing, bang, boom. And off to Australia he went. Now he's coming back. And guess what? He's got a duplex in Coventry. So that he and his family are going to be living in. Anyways, go ahead, Ryan. Your comments, thoughts?
Comments on sweat equity?
Whatever.
And as far as like what you want to,
we're into the young people, the millennials, who are just desperately trying to buy a house. And
yeah, Ryan's actually one of those people. He's been talking with me about, hey, I want to get in the game. So Ryan, I think that's a great area for you to comment on.
Ryan, make sure
we're
not. I'm sorry, Ryan. Make sure when you say get in the game, it's not like Rounders, the movie, the poker movie. So
I have not seen that one, so I'll try not to do that.
everybody should
But
see that in Wall Street. Go ahead, Ryan.
mhm. So I actually, from the get-go, I started, like, I got my whole real estate license all with the intent originally of it just being an asset for me to get into real estate investment more so. So then, as I got into it, I need to build capital, this and that. So I'm just getting experience in building capital in the market, found out I like sell more, but it's still my goal to get more involved in the investment side of it. So kind of what I want to do, I have a lot of friends who are interested as well. That's why when I quit accounting and went back to work, I went to a renovation company so I could at least learn more about the construction aspect on its own. What I kind of want to do is I want to start out with flips, because you can get that sweat equity like you were talking about. And it's not passive income, it's, direct, but it's quicker and you learn faster. And then I want to eventually get to where I can be, one of these guys I'm working for, where I'm out here buying and selling the rentals for more of a passive style income.
Right. I
Did
want
I
to
answer the question there, really, or did I just get off?
You did.
course?
Because one thing that just struck me listening to your question, because you have that, accounting background, right? And
Right.
Ryan has, Chris, you have the, the sales background. I want to suggest to everybody listening to this, and especially to you two guys, there's a great book that came out a couple years ago called Range, Range, Range. And it talks about the value of having a range of experiences that you bring to maybe your new avocation. And, in many cases, like for you, Ryan, your renovation experience, your accounting experience, it's all going to start helping you in this new venture that you're doing, because you've got to know the numbers. You've got to know the tax benefits. You have to know every nail cost, paint, the whole 9 yards. So you can wake up and say to yourself, it took me X number of hours and X number of dollars to renovate this house. And there better be a plan going forward, so that you can then bring that experience to A, the investor, or B, the young person coming in who wants to do some sweat equity. Yeah, again, all this shit, excuse the English, all this stuff is theoretical, but sweat equity means how many man hours? Are you going to be able to pull this off in a year, or are you just going to get tired? Comments, Chris? Go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, I think it depends on your experience level and how well you're able to figure out all that information. I have a new client that actually I just sold them a house, and they came back to me and said, hey, we want to start flipping houses. So we're going on vacation. When we get back, I want to start looking. I don't have experience with that. That's something that also I would like to get into. And one of the reasons that I got into real estate. So I'm going to use that to my advantage, help them flip the house, learn how to do that myself. Maybe that'll help us both flip a house quicker. Then they can buy another one that benefits me. I have experience. I can go out there and start flipping houses myself.
Yeah, well, like a lot of things, grass is always greener on the other side. We learned a long time ago, Mike, we're selling our Ellesmere property, and that was the first property that we bought in 2003. So we're selling our longest held property. That's been a super great rental and shaker, single family home. And we're selling that, closing in a week. But it was interesting when we got into this, we thought we were going to flip, and we quickly found out that we were spending more money. We were not going to get that money back if we flipped it. And the market had kind of softened. And all of a sudden we had this house that we thought we were going to make, a killing on the flip. And we were underwater in terms of our real retail costs. We thought it was going to take 50,000 to, retail our hours, our costs to fix it up. And then we'd sell it and we'd make a $20,000 profit. The reality was it cost us 60. and the market softened, and now we were underwater by 20 if we took the loss, but we ended up renting it. And all of a sudden we were getting 2,000 a month. It was like, oh my God, this is great. And that was how we built this. So when anybody starts talking about flipping, it's like you saying, hey, I want to make a movie. Okay. I mean, there is a lot involved in flipping. Go ahead, Mike, jump in.
Yeah, I was waiting to make this comment. So there's two things I'll say in Ryan's comment earlier from the accounting perspective. This will really ring true with him. But number one is know your numbers. And Mike, what you were saying, if you're going to flip a house, every single flip you do is going to go over budget. I don't care how good you are at it, how many years you've been doing it. We just finished a flip, and guess what? I ran over budget. I thought I had it all covered. There's always something. The other part about knowing your numbers is know the tax implications. Like you, Mike, when you talked about, oh, we thought we were going to make 20 grand, immediately in my mind, I said, yeah. And how much after taxes and how much after your budget went over? So I'm already thinking, man, to make, say, 10 grand even, is it worth it? Is it worth all that time and expense and labor and everything to make 10 grand? So you got to know your numbers. The second comment I wanted to make was, and I hear Chris, I hear you talking about it with, I know who the clients are you're talking about. The biggest mistake I see flippers make, especially like people that want to do it themselves and do a lot of the work themselves, is I'll check back with them and it's 8 months later. I'm thinking, oh man, that house is probably sold by now. Oh yeah, we're still working on it. The time that it takes is money, taxes, insurance, maintenance, risk. All these things come into play. And the one of the biggest mistakes I see them make is that they try to do everything themselves and they take too long. And Mike, like you said, things can change. The market can change. You might be thinking, oh man, the market's crazy. I'm going to list this house and sell it in a week. But guess what? 8 or 12 months from now, it may not be like this. And suddenly those numbers you ran 12 months ago aren't as good right now. So a couple tips there, freebies. Anyone that wants to send me a bottle of wine for that one, Mike, that's what you usually say, right?
Exactly. I hope Marissa's listening to this. So I missed that wine that you were sending me, Marissa. But anyways, yeah, I think anybody's talking about flipping, in the same breath, they should say, how can I lose money? Don't say, how am I going to make money? Just say, I'm thinking of flipping, and I think this would be a great way to lose money. Just say that, because that'll maybe make you pause. The only way you make money is if you fix it up and hold it for a while, rent it out, live there, whatever. But if you think you're going to be printing money flipping houses, you're in for a very rude awakening.
It's not as easy as everybody thinks. And to that point, I'm not an accountant, and please don't construe this as accounting advice, but I do know that I believe it's after 1 year, you go from a short-term gain to the long-term gain as far as taxes. So there's a lot of validity in what you're saying from a tax standpoint when it comes to this whole reselling of a property. So I really like the strategy of holding for a while and then selling when the market is right.
And
But what about the 1031 exchange though, right? You do that 45 days after you use the proceeds from what you sell, you can get something bigger and then defer taxes on that sale itself.
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. But there's another point. Let me run this by in terms of holding, is the depreciation you gain on your taxes. You want to comment on that, Ryan?
The depreciation you gain on your taxes?
Yeah, I mean,
You mean, well, the value of the property
appreciate it,
goes
yeah.
down.
Mike, a comment on that? I don't know. I'm not trying to throw you a curveball, Ryan, but Mike, your comment on
Yeah. So I think I've seen firsthand the benefits of this, Mike, and I'm sure you have too. Depending on how many years you depreciate a property over, that's a write-off that shelters your other income. And that's so valuable when you have other income to shelter, to have a write-off against. The depreciation is it's not a real cash loss. And I'm sure most of the people listening know what this means, but essentially you devalue the property year after year over a schedule, whatever your accountant is doing for you. And of course, when you sell it, you're going to have a bigger capital gain on it. But it has been so valuable to me to have those depreciation deductions every year.
Well, right. But isn't say, from my perspective, I know you guys are saying, be careful with flipping, it's not that fast. You're not printing money. But if you're talking about the savings from the depreciation, I mean, you're doing straight line depreciation. That's going to take a long time for there to be a significant effect from that, though, right? So if you're trying to pop off, and I know maybe I'm over optimistic, but from my position, the reason I want to start with flips as opposed to rentals is because, okay, I got enough capital now for one rental, so I go and get it, but then I'm going to be out of money for a while, right? How do you keep scaling up?
I understand what you're saying, and I think that what I learned was you almost had to have a money machine. You had to be making money, and then you were looking at real estate as a form of IRA type investment. And we were lucky, and Mike knows this because we've worked together for a long time. Not lucky, but we found that with our contracting business, we were generating a lot of cash. We were very profitable on our contracting business, and that just flowed into the real estate that we were buying, because all of a sudden now we had rentals, we bought these houses and paid them off, so now we have positive cash flow. But that took a while, and I think one of the cautionary tales about flipping is that it's like day trading on the stock market. I mean, it's that risky. And you've got to ask yourself, how much is my time worth? If I'm going to be spending 2,000 hours or 1,000 hours fixing up a house, that is, let's just say you're making 20 an hour. That's 20,000 I didn't make. I mean, there's a lot to sort of sort through here. Go ahead, Ryan, push back.
Yeah. No, I kind of agree with you on that point with the opportunity cost side, because, I think about it sometimes. So, when I look at what it would take to get involved for me, generally for a flip, it's going to be 3 business partners. I'll have a capital investor. I'll be syndicating it and working on the renovation myself, and another buddy who's way more versed in construction than me that makes me completely comfortable in that. But that's a 3-way split, right? So the profit margin has to be pretty high to make it work, because otherwise, if I'm thinking of the opportunity cost, you put that many hours into something, if I lead generate in a higher end neighborhood that long, I might get a couple listings for some really high end houses. It's going to be a lot easier for that kind of money than swinging a hammer all day.
Right. And I
for
think,
a long time. So I agree with you.
Yeah, Mike, I think one of the things that just sort of hit me in terms of flipping works if you're in a bubble, and let's say you're in LA and all of a sudden there's a buying frenzy and you've got a house and you can flip it. I mean, literally, some of these people in LA a couple years ago, they were buying a house and then 1 month later was worth 30,000 more. And yeah, I mean, what they did basically, they weren't investor savvy. They were lucky. They didn't hit the triple. They were born on third base. And yeah, I think what happens is, and we've talked about this in past podcasts, guys, is these people think they can duplicate that in Cleveland. They think I'll buy this house for 40. Oh my God, I'll buy this house for 40 and in a year it'll be worth 60. No, it's not. You bought it for 40 and in a year it'll be worth 30. That's how wild the swing, the chop is in the Cleveland real estate market. Chris, your thoughts, general thoughts. Go ahead, Chris, your thoughts?
No, my thoughts are this is great. Since I'm so new, this helps me gain a heck of a lot of perspective. I think I'll try and figure out what it is my clients that want to buy and flip are looking to do. Maybe it's better to them. When they first came to me, they came to me with like $167,000 house, looking to invest and do something with it. Then after talking with themselves, they started giving me properties anywhere from 40,000 to 60,000. So I think their perspective changed, and maybe it's time to reevaluate and and tell them the benefits of buying, doing some renovations and sitting on it for a while. Like you were talking about, that sounds like it's a no-brainer.
Right. And you kind of wonder if interest rates go up, whether all of a sudden, real estate market might soften. What's your thoughts, Ryan?
I think with certain types of the flips, maybe in more suburban areas, like as they've already kind of slowed down to some extent, they're a lot harder to find. Like, you were talking about in LA, like a month later, it was worth 30,000 more. That's not happening here. I think if you start looking into like the inner city Cleveland at some of those property values, given that in recent times, like I was saying before, out of state investors coming in frequently from California or the coast in general that are used to cap rates that are about 4%. I don't think it's going to slow down super fast until we have more of an even out sort of thing, because I think those coastal people with the capital are going to keep eating up our investments until it's somewhat equaled out.
Right.
For its value return proposition, at least.
Well, we had one
given
of our
risk and everything.
We had one of our listeners become an investor, and he flew in the other day from Claremont, California, just outside of LA, Southern Cal, and just great guy. He's retired. He came in because he wanted to see these properties that he wanted to invest in. And we had talked on Zoom. We had talked on the phone. He had met some of the people on Zoom. He flew in and we put him up at one of the properties that we're developing. And it was so fascinating driving around with him yesterday, because I asked him, what's his thoughts of Cleveland? He said, wow, it's just so pretty here. I mean, it's green. It's not brown. I mean, it's green because we have, temperate climate and rain, and just had a bunch of inches of rain, about a week ago. But, it's not a drought. And even when we're going through a drought, it's not like a 3-month drought. It's it's maybe a couple of weeks. And he was really, really impressed with Cleveland. But when I drove him around, I wanted to show him what micro-targeting was about, the neighborhoods in Cleveland. So certain neighborhoods people are steering away from, north of Mayfield, part East Cleveland, whatever. But the reality is that's where some of the opportunity is. There are parts of East Cleveland that in a year or two may be part of Cleveland Heights, or may be absorbed by Cleveland, or certain neighborhoods are going to be intact, and other neighborhoods are just going to be clear cut, for new condos. So the buying opportunity now is in areas just like the stock market that have been beaten down. But you want to make sure that you're investing in an area that is not only beaten down, but it's soon going to be going out of business. What's your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It kind of goes back to looking at the data and assessing the risks. And if you can find that, I guess you can maybe say the diamond in the rough, where you can find those groups of houses in that specific market where, it's like you said, going to be going out of business, and you can buy low and sell high, essentially.
Well, one of my favorite movies is Moneyball. In fact, not only favorite movie, but one of my all-time favorite books. And Moneyball speaks to analytics. So when you say, hey, you got to look at the data, well, yeah, everybody's they look at the data in different ways. Sometimes they see what they want to see. Sometimes it's kind of blowing in the wind that this neighborhood may be the next to pop. What's your thoughts, Ryan?
You're looking at like speculation for appreciation, right?
Right.
I would definitely, if I was doing something like that, I would want it to make sure that, on the front end, at least, it's income producing. So along the way, while I wait, I can be getting some sort of return. If it doesn't happen for as soon as I thought, at least it's not a waste of money, so to speak. And then if it does blow up, that's the icing on the cake. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think
you can sell it or you can keep me.
look at every investor needs to have an upside. May not happen in a year, but it's going to happen. It'll probably happen within that 3-4 years. I mean, a great example would be New York City and Brooklyn. Brooklyn was 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when my wife and I were there. I remember our 5th wedding anniversary. So this would have been, 88, 89. We spent an extra day in New York because we love going to the city. And we went over to the River Cafe, which was across, was in Brooklyn. But you didn't go beyond that because there were pockets that were pretty bad. Well, look at it now. All of Brooklyn, and then adjoining suburbs have joined the renaissance. In Cleveland, and we've talked about this in earlier podcasts, guys, but there are pockets of Cleveland that are unknown to investors, like Forest Hill, that are going to be the next destination neighborhood, or like Meadowbrook and Lee, where adjoining streets are going to enjoy their appreciation and their renaissance. So I do not want people to be investing in Cleveland unless there is appreciation. And your data is got to be married with a street sense. You can sense that things are starting to happen. And that's where you're looking at the numbers, but you're also, you're listening. You got and you're seeing what restaurants are starting to open up, what young people are starting to flow into. Chris, final thoughts on all this. We gotta wrap this up.
Yeah, I guess you have to figure out and ask yourself what dictates the market. Are we as real estate agents kind of the eyes and ears on the ground where we can see some things happening and say, maybe this is the next area that's going to be great for some investors. So I get a client that calls me and say, hey, I'm looking to invest in Akron. And I say, great, I know exactly where to take you. This place is where you need to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you've got, go ahead. Hold on, Ryan. I just want to address one thing about Chris. Look, at the end of the day, they're calling for a realtor because they're going to tell them something they don't know. All right. If if you're not adding any value, if you're not adding any expertise, if you're not listening to what they want and pushing back and telling them what's going on, then why should they pay that commission? So, okay, Ryan, your turn. Final thoughts.
I was just going to add to, paying attention to the market to see where you have evidence to make an educated guess or hypothesis on where, there's going to be improvement and appreciation. Another thing I look at, like when I first got my license, how I was saying, I freaked out and I went for that renovation company and put it on the back burner. But I sold one house real early before then. I had a guy, he was looking in all these different opportunity zones within Cleveland that had tax breaks.
Right.
So that's another thing to watch for.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, we're going to wrap it up. Mike Ferrante had to jump on a call, so he's out. But I want to thank you two guys for helping to light up our podcast. So good luck in your real estate careers, and hopefully this wave will continue. And folks, we'll catch you probably within 3 or 4 days with a couple other podcasts. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
See you later. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast. You can find all of our episodes at www.reilly-properties.com, or you can find us on your favorite streaming services like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Overcast, SoundCloud, and more. If you have topics or questions for us, you can always email us at theclevelandrealestateinvestor@gmail.com. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.